Why depending on your children in old age can cost too much? Because sometimes you move in thinking you'll be cared for and end up being silenced. You lose your space, lose your routine, lose even the right to exist in your own way. Your history becomes excess, your voice is treated as noise, and love comes with rules that slowly erase you. Now you'll discover why this choice, made with such affection, can hide a price too high to pay. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. We continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear in your life. Eleanor adjusted the living room curtains one last time, those same curtains she had sewn with such care 42 years ago. The floral fabric, faded by time, still held the familiar smell of her home, a mixture of cloves, cinnamon, and the French perfume she had always worn. Her fingers trembled slightly as she touched them, not from the weight of years, but from the certainty that this would be the last time. The three-bedroom house in Maple Grove had been her universe for more than 4 decades. Each room held memories that intertwined with her own identity. The kitchen, where she had prepared thousands of meals, the garden where she had cultivated roses and herbs, the bedroom where she had raised her children and later welcomed them as adults with her grandchildren. Those walls weren't just physical structure. They were an extension of her very being. When Richard, her oldest son, suggested that she move into his apartment with his wife Mary, Eleanor felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. At 74, she could no longer take care of the garden she loved so much by herself. Her joints ached after long hours of housework, and the nights became increasingly lonely. Richard's proposal seemed like a mutual salvation. She would offer presence, experience, and help with the 8-year-old twins, Peter and Sophie, while receiving security, company, and family affection in return. "Mom, it'll be wonderful having you nearby," Richard had said that Sunday afternoon, as he watched Eleanor water her rose bushes for the last time. "The kids will love having Grandma Eleanor always there, and you won't have to worry about house maintenance, security, or anything else." Mary, always kind and attentive, had agreed enthusiastically. "We've prepared the back room especially for you, Eleanor. It has a beautiful view of the building's garden, and you can decorate it your way with your favorite things." The 3-bedroom apartment in Riverside Heights was modern, well located, and spacious. The room they had designated for her was at the end of the hallway with a window overlooking a well-maintained green area. When Eleanor arrived with her belongings, she found the space clean and organized, ready to receive her most cherished possessions. With reverent care, she arranged the old photographs on the dresser, her wedding to Anthony, who had passed away 10 years ago, the children when they were small in the park, the newborn grandchildren. Beside them, she placed the wooden jewelry box she had received from her mother, still containing the few jewels that had survived time. On the wall, she hung a hand-embroidered picture she had made herself, with delicate flowers and the phrase, "Home is where the heart is." But it was the embroidered tablecloth that brought the most emotion. Spread over the small center table, it transformed the environment. That piece had been crafted with her mother still alive, stitch by stitch, during winter evenings. For decades, it had been the centerpiece of all family Christmases, receiving special dishes, traditional sweets, and the most important conversations. More than an object, it was a symbol of continuity, tradition, belonging. The first months passed like a gentle dream. Eleanor woke naturally at 6 in the morning, prepared coffee with the strong aroma she had always preferred, and waited for the family to awaken. When the twins came down for breakfast, she had already separated their school uniforms, prepared lunch boxes with carefully made sandwiches, and checked that their backpacks were complete. "Grandma Eleanor, you make the best sugar bread in the world," Sophie would say, embracing her with genuine affection. "And you tell the best stories," Peter would add, always curious about his grandmother's adventures when she was young. During the day, Eleanor found small pleasures in helping Mary with household chores. She folded clothes with the meticulous care of someone who had transformed that gesture into art over decades. She watered the plants on the balcony, humming old songs that made her feel alive. She prepared traditional cakes that filled the apartment with familiar aromas, creating bridges between her old life and the new reality. When Richard arrived from work, he found the house organized, the children helped with their homework, and dinner already in progress. Eleanor felt useful, valued, an essential part of the family mechanism. Her suggestions about the grandchildren's education were heard with respect, her traditional recipes were frequently requested, and her presence brought a sense of completeness to everyone. "Mom, I don't know how we managed to live without you here," Richard would say, sitting next to her on the couch after dinner. "The kids are calmer, Mary is less overwhelmed, and I have the peace of mind of knowing you're well taken care of." Eleanor smiled, feeling fulfilled. This new family arrangement really seemed like a second chance to live intensely. The apartment, initially strange, was beginning to take on familiar contours. She had memorized the night noises, discovered the best times to use the kitchen, and established small routines that made her feel at home. On Sunday afternoons, when the family gathered in the living room to watch movies, Eleanor occupied her favorite armchair, with her grandchildren nestled beside her. It was in these moments that she felt most complete, surrounded by beloved voices, genuine laughter, and the human warmth that had always been her greatest treasure. Her closest friends came to visit regularly. Carol, her neighbor of 40 years, brought news from the old neighborhood. Lucy, a friend from when her children were in school, always arrived with homemade sweets and a willingness for long conversations. These visits were precious moments where Eleanor could talk about her feelings, share memories, and keep alive the bonds she had built throughout her life. During these gatherings, she prepared tea with homemade cookies, using her favorite porcelain that she had brought from her old house. Conversations flowed naturally, permeated by laughter, confidences, and the accumulated wisdom of well-lived lives. It was as if a piece of her previous identity was preserved through these moments of intimacy and authenticity. The first Christmas in the new home was especially touching. Eleanor naturally took charge of organizing the dinner, using her embroidered tablecloth as she always had. She prepared the traditional stuffing, the turkey seasoned with her culinary secrets, and the French toast that had been a family specialty for generations. The children helped with the decorations, and she felt deeply connected to the purpose of keeping family traditions alive. "Grandma, why are you crying?" asked Sophie, noticing her grandmother's moist eyes during the prayer before dinner. "These are tears of gratitude, my dear," replied Eleanor, caressing her granddaughter's face. "I'm very happy to be here with you all." And she truly was. At that moment, surrounded by family, in an environment that was beginning to truly become hers, Eleanor felt she had made the right decision. The move hadn't represented a loss, but a necessary and beneficial transformation. Her life had gained new meaning, new energy, new perspective. The following months confirmed this sense of rightness. Eleanor established small routines that made her feel productive and valued. She took her grandchildren to school when necessary, participated in parent meetings as a respected auxiliary figure, and contributed advice based on her life experience. Her presence in the apartment wasn't just physical, but emotional and functional. When winter came, Eleanor organized afternoon tea for her friends in her new environment. She prepared special treats, arranged the table with care, and received visitors with the same pleasure as always. During these occasions, she truly felt like the lady of the house, a competent hostess of a home that finally really seemed to be hers. It was as if all the initial fears had been unfounded. The adaptation had proceeded smoothly and naturally, creating a new family dynamic that benefited everyone. Eleanor had found her place in this new world, maintaining her identity while embracing the necessary changes for this new phase of life. The changes arrived like an almost imperceptible breeze, so gentle that Eleanor took weeks to notice that the wind had changed direction. It all began with small details that, in isolation, seemed insignificant, but together formed a disturbing mosaic of transformation. On the first morning of March, Eleanor woke up as always at 6 o'clock, prepared coffee, and waited for the family to awaken. When she went down to the kitchen, she found Mary already preparing breakfast, moving efficiently through the cupboards that Eleanor had organized the day before. "Good morning, Eleanor," said Mary with her gentle smile. "You didn't need to wake up so early. I can take care of breakfast during the week. You can rest a little longer." Eleanor felt a strange pang in her chest, but smiled in response. "It's no trouble, dear. I've always woken up early. It's my natural rhythm." "I know, but now you can relax. You don't need to worry about these things anymore." The phrase echoed in Eleanor's mind all day. You don't need to worry anymore. But she liked to worry, liked to care, to feel useful. That morning activity wasn't a burden, it was a pleasure, a way to demonstrate love and care. In the following days, the routine repeated itself. Mary had definitely taken over breakfast preparation, organizing everything with efficient haste, but without the artisanal care that Eleanor had always imprinted on these tasks. The sandwiches were made quickly, without the special details that made the grandchildren smile. The juice was store-bought, no longer the fresh squeezed orange juice that Eleanor prepared. When she tried to suggest that she would like to continue helping, she heard with increasing frequency, "Let me do it. Don't trouble yourself. You've done so much throughout your life." Kind, affectionate phrases, but ones that gradually distanced her from the activities that made her feel alive and necessary. Lunchtime also underwent subtle changes. Eleanor used to eat when she felt hungry, usually between noon and 12:30, but she noticed that the family had established a fixed time, 1 o'clock, when Richard returned from work. It wasn't a declared imposition, but a silent expectation that everyone would adapt to the new rhythm. "Eleanor, lunch is ready," Mary would announce punctually at 1 o'clock, even if Eleanor wasn't hungry yet or was busy with some activity. When she tried to explain that she preferred to eat a little later, she heard, "But it's better if we all eat together, isn't it? It's more organized for me to wash the dishes and clean the kitchen." The logic was irrefutable, but Eleanor felt that something essential was being lost. It wasn't just the freedom to choose mealtime, but the perception that her personal preferences were being gradually absorbed by a family organization that didn't consult her. The afternoons with her friends also began to change. Carol arrived one day for her usual visit and found the house in motion. Mary was cleaning the furniture with strong-smelling products, Richard was working on his computer at the living room table, and the twins were watching television at high volume. "How about we have tea in my room?" suggested Eleanor, noticing her friend's discomfort. "Of course, if that's better for you," replied Carol, but Eleanor caught the change in her tone of voice. In the room with the door closed, the conversation flowed, but it lacked the naturalness of previous meetings. Eleanor felt like a teenager hiding from her parents, not like the lady of the house receiving a cherished visitor. "Eleanor, are you all right?" asked Carol with the sharp perception of 40 years of friendship. "Yes, I am, just still adapting." "You know you can count on me for anything, don't you?" Eleanor nodded, but something in her chest contracted. Was there something to tell? Or were they just exaggerated impressions of a woman in the process of adaptation? In the following weeks, visits from her friends became more spaced out. Not for lack of desire, but due to a diffuse sensation that perhaps it would be better to meet in neutral locations. Eleanor began to schedule meetings in nearby cafes, claiming that she liked to go out and discover new places. "Why doesn't Carol come to our house anymore?" Sophie asked one day with the innocent curiosity of children. "Grandma, Eleanor prefers that we meet outside," Eleanor replied quickly, but the words sounded strange even to her. In truth, Eleanor no longer knew if she preferred it or if she had been led to prefer it. The difference between choice and forced adaptation was becoming increasingly tenuous. Music was another subtle but significant change. Eleanor had always been a lover of classic American folk music. She had a habit of playing her favorite songs during household activities, humming softly while folding clothes or organizing cupboards. But she noticed that whenever she turned on the sound system, someone would lower the volume or change to a more neutral station. "Grandma, this music is very sad," Peter said one day when Eleanor put on a Joan Baez song. "It's not sad, my love. It's nostalgic. There's a difference." "But I don't like it. Can you put on a happier song?" Eleanor changed the music but kept thinking. When she was an adult in her own house, no one questioned her musical choices. Now, at 74, she needed to justify her aesthetic preferences to an 8-year-old child. In the kitchen, the changes were even more marked. Eleanor always seasoned her food with garlic, onions, black pepper, and fresh herbs. But she began to hear comments about strong seasonings, about the need to cook more mildly because of the children, about concerns with high blood pressure. "Eleanor, how about using less salt?" suggested Mary, watching Eleanor prepare a sauté. "I've always cooked this way, never had problems with pressure." "I know, but it's prevention, and the children also adapt better to milder flavors." Eleanor reduced the salt, but the food became bland. When Richard tasted it, he made a forced expression of approval that she interpreted as disguised disappointment. "It's different," commented Peter during dinner. "Different how?" asked Eleanor. "No taste." "Peter, that's not how you talk about Grandma's food," Mary reprimanded. But Eleanor knew the boy was right. The food was insipid, without the personality she had always imprinted on her dishes. It was as if she were being gradually erased, seasoning by seasoning, choice by choice. Family Sundays also underwent changes. Eleanor used to suggest activities, propose outings, give ideas for family leisure, but she noticed that her suggestions were received with increasing politeness and implemented with decreasing frequency. "How about going to Central Park?" she suggested on a sunny Sunday. "Good idea, Eleanor. But we already promised the boys we'd go to the mall," replied Richard. "We can go to the park next week," added Mary. But the following week there was another commitment, and the next another. Eleanor realized she had stopped suggesting outings, becoming accustomed to simply agreeing with plans already established by the family. One afternoon, while looking for a book she had brought from her old house, Eleanor noticed that some of her belongings had been reorganized. Nothing had disappeared, but the arrangement was different. Her photographs were grouped more compactly. Some decorative objects were moved to less visible positions. "Mary, did you touch my things?" "I just organized them a little, Eleanor. It was somewhat cluttered." Eleanor looked around. It really was more organized, cleaner, more functional, but it was less hers. Her objects had been accommodated with aesthetic criteria, not emotional ones. The previous arrangement had emotional logic. Each item was where she could see it, touch it, relate to it. Now, they looked nice, but distant. "Don't worry. You can arrange them however you want," said Mary, noticing Eleanor's expression. But Eleanor knew she couldn't. There was something in the tone, in the way the space had been reorganized, that communicated a silent message. "This is no longer your exclusive territory. You can be here, but you can't completely control it." That night, alone in her room, Eleanor opened the closet and observed her clothes. They were well arranged, separated by colors and seasons. But something was missing that she couldn't define. Perhaps it was the spontaneity, the freedom to leave a blouse thrown over a chair, to keep a shoe out of place, to live without the constant pressure of perfect organization. For the first time since the move, Eleanor wondered if she had made the right choice. It wasn't unhappiness. It wasn't regret. It was a diffuse sensation that something precious was being lost in the adaptation process. Her individuality was being gently dissolved in favor of a family harmony that, however well-intentioned, didn't completely include her voice, her preferences, her particular way of existing in the world. The period that followed was marked by an even deeper transformation in the family dynamic. Eleanor began to perceive that it wasn't just her routines that were changing, but her very presence that was being gradually molded to fit a specific pattern of coexistence. The mornings became silent. Eleanor woke up at the same time as always, but now stayed in her room until she heard the family's movements. When she finally went down to the kitchen, she found everything already organized, coffee made, dishes washed. Mary greeted her with the same kindness as always, but Eleanor felt that her presence was unnecessary at that moment. "Good morning, Eleanor. Did you sleep well?" "Yes, I did, thank you." "The coffee is fresh. I've already set out your cup." Eleanor smiled and thanked her, but the sensation of being a guest in a place that should be her home intensified with each morning. It wasn't ill will. It was an efficiency that excluded her. Mary had completely taken control of the kitchen, not out of selfishness, but from a practical logic that made sense to everyone except Eleanor. During breakfast, conversations revolved around the day's commitments: the children's school, Richard's meetings, shopping that Mary needed to do. Eleanor listened, occasionally offered suggestions, but felt that her words were received with politeness and rarely implemented. "Grandma, you don't talk as much anymore," Sophie observed one morning, with the keen perception of children. Eleanor was surprised by the observation. "I don't. Before you used to tell stories at breakfast, now you just listen." It was true. Eleanor had acquired the habit of listening more and speaking less, not for lack of subject matter, but from a growing sensation that her stories were no longer welcome in the accelerated rhythm of family mornings. "It's because you're always in a hurry," replied Eleanor, trying to justify the silence. "But I like your stories," insisted Sophie. Mary intervened with diplomacy. "How about Grandma telling stories at night at bedtime? Mornings are always so rushed." Eleanor nodded, but she knew that at night the children were tired, and her stories competed with television, games, and the day's fatigue. It wasn't the same thing. The morning stories had a special flavor, an intimacy that couldn't be replicated at other times. The situation worsened when Eleanor began to notice that her opinions about her grandchildren's education were received with growing reserve. When Peter had difficulties with mathematics, Eleanor suggested the method she had used with her own children, practical exercises with everyday situations. "Eleanor, it's just that pedagogy is different nowadays," explained Mary. "The school uses more modern methods. Maybe it's better to follow the teacher's guidance." Eleanor understood the logic, but felt that her decades of experience educating children was being gently discarded. It wasn't just about mathematics. It was about the value of her accumulated wisdom. When Sophie asked about dating after hearing classmates talk about the subject, Eleanor began to respond with her usual naturalness, but was interrupted by Mary. "Sophie, let's leave this conversation for when you're older." "But I just wanted to know," protested the girl. "We'll talk later," cut in Mary, directing a meaningful look at Eleanor. Eleanor understood the message. Her values, her way of approaching delicate subjects, her manner of educating were no longer appropriate for the new generation. She needed to adapt, to follow protocols she hadn't helped create. Visits from her friends practically ceased. Carol called less frequently, and when she did call, the conversations were brief, permeated by an embarrassment that neither could define. "Eleanor, are you all right? Your voice sounds different." "I'm fine, Carol, just a little tired. How about meeting for coffee next week?" "I'll see if I can. There's always something going on here." But Eleanor knew the problem wasn't the schedule. The problem was that she no longer knew how to explain her situation, how to tell that she was well cared for, but felt erased, how to explain that she was surrounded by love but felt alone. One afternoon, trying to regain some control over her space, Eleanor decided to rearrange her room. She placed the photographs where she could see them better, spread some personal objects around the dresser, left a book open on the table to resume reading. The next day, when she returned from the market with Mary, she found the room organized again. Nothing had disappeared, but everything was in the right place. The photographs grouped, the objects aligned, the book closed and put away. "Mary, did you arrange my room?" "The housekeeper came today, Eleanor. She just organized it a little." "But I had left it the way I wanted." "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you had a specific organization. Next time I'll let her know." Eleanor nodded, but understood that she had lost another silent battle. Her room was no longer entirely hers. It was subject to external criteria of organization, cleanliness, and functionality that didn't take into account her personal preferences. The most painful episode happened on a Saturday afternoon. Eleanor was organizing some old papers when Peter entered the room playing detective. "Grandma, can I see your old photographs?" "Of course, my love." Peter leafed through the album with curiosity, asking questions about the people, the clothes, the places. Eleanor felt renewed, useful, connected with her grandson through her memories. "Who is this pretty lady?" "That's me at 20 years old." "You were very beautiful, Grandma. And who is this gentleman?" "That's your grandfather Anthony when we were dating." Peter observed the photograph attentively. "You had a boyfriend?" "Mom said you got married very young." "We dated for 2 years before getting married. In those days it was different. People—" "Peter, come eat lunch," Mary shouted from the hallway. "Coming, Mum, Grandma keep telling me." "I'll tell you later. Go have lunch." But later never came. Peter was absorbed by other activities, and Eleanor was left with the story half told, with the sensation that her personal narrative was being constantly interrupted by daily urgencies. That night, Eleanor tried to talk to Richard about how she felt. "Son, can I talk to you for a minute?" "Of course, Mum. What is it?" "It's just that I've been feeling a bit, how can I say, displaced." Richard frowned with genuine concern. "Displaced how? Aren't you feeling well here?" "It's not that. It's that I feel I'm losing a bit of my identity." "Mom, you're adapting to a new situation. It's normal to feel that way at first. But it's been almost a year. And it's been wonderful having you here. The kids love it. Mary is more at ease, and I have the certainty that you're safe and well cared for." Eleanor realized that Richard truly believed what he was saying. For him, the arrangement was perfect. Everyone was benefiting, everyone was happy. The sense of loss she experienced wasn't visible to others, perhaps because it was too subtle, or perhaps because others were focused on the practical aspects of living together. "I just wish I could, I don't know, participate more in the decisions." "But you do participate, Mom. Your opinions are always welcome." "They're heard but not implemented." Richard was silent for a moment. Mom, do you think we're being unfair to you? It's not unfairness, it's as if I'm being cared for too much, as if my voice were being filtered by good intentions. We just want you to be happy and feel comfortable. I know, son, and I'm grateful. It's just that sometimes I feel I'm losing a bit of myself in the process. Richard hugged his mother affectionately. I'll talk to Mary. Maybe we can adjust some things. Eleanor felt relieved, but deep down knew that the problem wasn't something that could be resolved with adjustments. It was deeper, more structural. It had to do with power, with autonomy, with the right to exist fully even at an advanced age. A few days later, she noticed that Mary made a conscious effort to include her more in household decisions. She asked her opinion about the menu, requested suggestions for organizing the house, consulted her on matters related to the children, but Eleanor perceived that it was an effort, not a genuine need. Her opinions were solicited out of politeness, not real value, and that was even more painful than being ignored. Being consulted out of pity was a humiliation disguised as kindness. One night, alone in her room, Eleanor looked in the mirror and didn't completely recognize the woman she saw. It wasn't just the natural aging. It was something in the expression, in the posture, in the way her eyes seemed less bright. It was as if she were becoming a more faded version of herself, more contained, more adapted to family standards, but less authentic. She opened the closet and found at the back a vibrant red blouse she hadn't worn for months. She put it on and observed herself in the mirror. The color brought life to her face, personality to her figure. But she knew that the next day she would return to neutral colors, safe choices, preferences that didn't bother anyone. That was the essence of her transformation. She was learning not to bother, not to occupy too much space, not to have very marked preferences. She was becoming a comfortable presence, predictable, easily manageable. But she was ceasing to be Eleanor. The second Christmas in the apartment arrived with a different expectation. Eleanor had spent weeks mentally preparing the celebration, remembering special dishes, thinking about decorations, anticipating the moment of using her embroidered tablecloth again. It would be an opportunity to recover her identity as the organizer of family traditions. In the first week of December, Eleanor mentioned her plans during breakfast. I need to start thinking about the Christmas menu. How about making the family's special stuffing? And that pineapple dessert that the children love? That's good, Eleanor, replied Mary. But this year, I thought about simplifying. Maybe we could order the dinner ready-made. It's more practical for everyone. Eleanor felt her chest tighten. But we've always made it at home. It's a family tradition. I know, but you don't need to worry about all that work anymore. You can enjoy Christmas resting. But I like to prepare it. It's not work, it's pleasure. Richard intervened with diplomacy. Mom, how about we prepare some special dishes but order the main ones? It's a middle ground. Eleanor nodded, but knew that something fundamental was being lost. It wasn't just about cooking. It was about being the matriarch who conducted family traditions, who imprinted her mark on the most significant moments of the year. When the time came to decorate the house, Eleanor expected to be consulted about the ornamentation. She had brought some special Christmas pieces from her old house, porcelain angels, scented candles, and especially her embroidered tablecloth, which would be the center of the dinner table. But on Christmas Eve morning, Eleanor woke up and found the living room completely decorated. Mary had gotten up early and organized everything efficiently. Decorated tree, table set with a new white linen tablecloth, modern and harmonious ornaments. How beautiful the decoration looks, praised Eleanor, trying to disguise her disappointment. Thank you, Eleanor. I wanted to give the look a refresh. And my embroidered tablecloth. Oh, I thought about using this one, which matches better with the new dishes. Your tablecloth is beautiful, but it's a bit too traditional. Eleanor remained silent, absorbing the impact of those words. Her tablecloth, crafted with love by her mother, witness to decades of family Christmases, was now considered too traditional. It was as if her personal history were an obstacle to the family's modernity. Can I at least help in the kitchen? Of course, you can make that special stuffing you mentioned. Eleanor spent the morning preparing the stuffing, but working in a kitchen she no longer felt was hers. Each seasoning she added was observed by Mary, who made suggestions about quantity, flavor, presentation. How about using less bacon? Richard is watching his cholesterol. I've always made it with this amount. I know, but it's better to prevent, and the children also adapt better to milder flavors. The stuffing was ready, but it was no longer the original recipe. It was an adapted version, modified, filtered by medical concerns and preferences that weren't hers. It was as if even her culinary contribution needed external approval. During dinner, Eleanor observed the table and didn't recognize herself in it. Everything was beautiful, elegant, modern, but it lacked her personal mark, her aesthetic identity, her particular way of celebrating. It was a family Christmas, but it wasn't her Christmas. When Richard made the traditional toast, he thanked everyone. To Mary for organizing everything with such care, to the children for filling our home with joy, and to Grandma Eleanor for always being with us. Eleanor smiled, but realized she had been mentioned last, almost as an afterthought. She was no longer the main organizer, the central figure of the celebration. She was a cherished presence, but secondary. After dinner, when everyone retired to watch television, Eleanor went up to her room and sat on the bed. For the first time in months, she cried. It wasn't sadness, it was grief. She was processing the loss of a version of herself that had died gradually, without ceremony, without acknowledgement. The next day, trying to regain some control over her life, Eleanor decided to completely reorganize her room. She wanted to create a space that was truly hers, that reflected her personality, her preferences, her history. She spent the whole morning arranging, placing the photographs where she could see them better, organizing books by emotional affinity, not by size, creating small corners that told her story. When she finished, the room had character, had soul, had identity. In the afternoon, she had to leave for a medical appointment. When she returned, she found Mary in the hallway with an embarrassed expression. "Eleanor, I need to talk to you." "What happened?" "It's just that during the house cleaning, some of your things were reorganized." Eleanor ran to her room and stopped at the door, incredulous. Her photographs were again grouped compactly, the books organized by size, and several personal objects had simply disappeared. "Where are my things?" The housekeeper thought they were old objects. She donated them to a charity institution. Old objects? Which objects? "Some old picture frames, that music box, and your embroidered tablecloth." Eleanor felt the world spin. Her embroidered tablecloth, crafted with her mother, present at all family Christmases for decades, had been discarded as an old object. "Mary, that tablecloth was my mother's. It was one of the most important things I had." "I didn't know, Eleanor. I'm very sorry. I tried to locate it, but the donation has already been distributed." Eleanor sat on the bed, feeling that something was definitely breaking inside her. It wasn't just the loss of an object, it was the perception that her personal history had no value to the people around her. Her memories were easily disposable, her emotional symbols were seen as clutter. "Eleanor, I really am very sorry. I can try to buy a similar tablecloth." "It's not the same thing," replied Eleanor, with a voice she didn't recognize. That night, Eleanor had a frank conversation with herself. She looked in the mirror and asked herself, "Who are you now? What's left of the Eleanor who lived in the Maple Grove house?" The answer was painful. Very little remained. The current Eleanor was a domesticated, adequate, silent version of the woman she had been. She had traded her freedom for security, her individuality for family harmony, her voice for acceptance. But in that moment of deep pain, something began to move inside her. It was as if the loss of the embroidered tablecloth had been the limit, the point of no return. She could no longer continue erasing herself in the name of harmonious coexistence. The next morning, Eleanor made a decision. She got up, put on the red blouse she had left at the back of the closet, and went down to the kitchen determined to recover at least part of her morning routine. "Good morning, Mary. Can I prepare the coffee today?" "Of course, Eleanor, but—" "No buts. I want to prepare breakfast for my family." There was something in Eleanor's tone that prevented any objection. Mary nodded and stepped back, watching her mother-in-law move around the kitchen with an energy she hadn't shown for months. Eleanor prepared strong coffee as she liked it, made carefully crafted sandwiches for her grandchildren, squeezed fresh oranges, and put soft music on the radio. When the family came down, they found the table set with care, and Eleanor smiling in a way they hadn't seen for a long time. "What a good smell!" exclaimed Peter. "Grandma looks different today," observed Sophie. Different how? Asked Eleanor. More grandma-like. Her granddaughter's phrase touched Eleanor deeply. More grandma-like. That's what she had lost. Her identity as a grandmother, as a matriarch, as an experienced and wise woman. She had become a decorative figure, pleasant, but without substance. During breakfast, Eleanor conversed naturally, told stories, laughed loudly, expressed opinions. She felt alive in a way she hadn't experienced for months. After breakfast, she made another decision. She called Carol. Carol, it's me, Eleanor. How about coming over for tea this afternoon? Are you sure? Won't it be a bother? It won't be a bother at all. This is my home too. When Carol arrived, Eleanor received her in the living room, no longer in the bedroom. She prepared tea with her special cookies, using her favorite porcelain, and they talked for hours. Mary passed through the living room several times, but Eleanor didn't feel constrained nor suggest they withdraw. You're different, Eleanor, observed Carol. I'm more myself, replied Eleanor. During the conversation, Eleanor told about the loss of the embroidered tablecloth, about the process of nullification she had been experiencing, about the sensation of losing her identity. And what are you going to do? Asked Carol. I'm going to remember who I am, replied Eleanor firmly. That night, Eleanor wrote a letter to herself, remembering her qualities, her history, her achievements. She wrote about the woman who had raised 3 children, who had taken care of the house for decades, who had had a full and meaningful life. She wrote about the grandmother who had experience to share, stories to tell, love to give. I am Eleanor Marie Smith, 74 years old, mother of 3 children, grandmother of 4 grandchildren, widow of Anthony Smith. I like American music, I cook well, I know how to tell stories, I have life experience. My opinion has value, my presence has meaning, my history deserves to be respected. She kept the letter inside a book and decided she would read it whenever she felt lost. In the days that followed, Eleanor began to implement small changes. She went back to using her favorite colors, resumed the habit of listening to music at the volume she liked, started cooking with the seasonings she preferred. When someone suggested modifications, she listened with respect, but maintained her choices. Eleanor, how about using less pepper? Suggested Mary during lunch preparation. Thank you for the suggestion, but I'll keep it as I always do. Whoever doesn't like pepper doesn't have to eat it. It was a small revolution, but significant. Eleanor was relearning to have preferences, to defend them, to exist without apologizing. One afternoon, she decided to visit her old street. She needed to make peace with the past, understand what she had lost and what she could recover. She took the bus alone, something she hadn't done for months, and walked slowly to her old address. The house no longer existed. In its place stood a modern building with a glass facade and compact apartments. The garden where she had planted roses had been transformed into a garage. The lemon tree she had cared for decades had disappeared. Instead of sadness, Eleanor felt a strange freedom. That house had been part of her identity, but it wasn't her complete identity. She was more than an address, more than walls and furniture. She was a woman with history, experience, her own personality. Walking down the street, she remembered that when she had moved to that house at 32, it had also been an adaptation. She had also needed to create a new identity, establish new routines, find her place. The difference was that at 32, she had had the power to shape the environment to her needs. At 74, she was letting the environment shape her. But it wasn't too late to regain some control, not over everything, but over essential aspects of her personality, over her way of relating to the world, over her voice in the family dynamic. She returned to the apartment with renewed determination. She found Richard in the living room and asked to talk. "Son, I need to talk to you about some things." "Of course, Mum. What is it?" "I want you to understand that I'm very grateful for having been welcomed here, but I need some changes." Richard was attentive, concerned. "I need to regain some space to be myself. I need my opinions to be heard not out of politeness, but for real value. I need my experience to be respected, not just tolerated." "Mom, you've always been respected here. I'm treated with affection, but my individuality is being erased. I'm becoming a domesticated version of myself." Richard remained silent, processing his mother's words. "I don't want to be a problem for anyone, but I also don't want to stop being who I am. What would you like to change?" "I want to go back to cooking as I like, decorating my room as I prefer, receiving my friends without embarrassment. I want my stories to be heard, my experience to be valued. Mom, it could be that without meaning to, we've overdone the care. Care without freedom is a prison, son, even if it's a golden prison. Richard hugged his mother with renewed affection. We'll talk to Mary. We'll find a balance. It's not about finding balance, it's about allowing me to exist fully. In the months that followed, Eleanor implemented gradual but significant changes. She went back to actively participating in household organization, resumed her friendships, recovered her voice in family conversations. It wasn't an easy process. There were resistances, adjustments, negotiations, but Eleanor had decided that she preferred the tension of authenticity to the comfort of annulment. When the third Christmas arrived, Eleanor once again took charge of organizing the dinner. She prepared her traditional dishes, decorated the table with personal symbols, and even without the original embroidered tablecloth, created an environment that reflected her personality. "What a beautiful table, Grandma," praised Sophie. "Thank you, my dear. This table tells our family history." During the toast, Richard looked at his mother with renewed admiration. "To Grandma Eleanor, who teaches us that it's never too late to remember who we are." Eleanor smiled, feeling complete for the first time in a long time. She had recovered her identity without losing the family's love. She had learned that accepting care didn't mean giving up freedom, that aging wasn't synonymous with becoming invisible. That night, looking at herself in the mirror, Eleanor recognized the woman she saw. It was herself, older, wiser, but essentially Eleanor. She had learned that the safest home wasn't the one with the most protection, but the one where she could continue being who she was entirely. And she had a story to tell, a story of rebirth, of courage, of self-love. A story that could inspire other women not to let themselves be erased, not to accept that age is synonymous with silence. Because it's never too late to remember that existing fully isn't a luxury. It's a fundamental right, regardless of one's age. The end. Dear listeners, we hope that Eleanor's story has touched your hearts and made you reflect on the importance of preserving our identity in all phases of life. This narrative reminds us that true care doesn't require the annulment of who we are, but rather respect for our individuality and experience. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button to help us bring these reflections to more people. Every day we bring stories that explore the complexity of human relationships, the challenges of aging, and the importance of keeping our essence alive. Share your own experiences in the comments below. Have you gone through similar situations? Do you know someone who has faced similar challenges? Your stories and reflections enrich our community and can inspire other people. Don't miss our upcoming content, where we'll continue exploring the multiple facets of human life with sensitivity and depth. Until the next story.